The sun burned low over the horizon, painting the western sky in strokes of blood and gold. The wind carried dust across the wide plains, whistling through sagebrush and rattling the bones of long-dead cattle left scattered by rustlers and coyotes. The town of Dustwater lay just a few miles east, its crooked main street lined with warped wooden facades, a leaning church bell tower, and a saloon that smelled of sweat, whiskey, and old gunpowder. In that fading light rode a man people had learned to laugh at, or at least mutter about when he passed. Caleb Hart, a cowboy with more miles behind him than most of the green ranch hands who mocked him. His horse, a rangy chestnut named Buck, moved slow, steady, and unflinching beneath him. Caleb was broad-shouldered, sun-scorched, and carried eyes that had seen too much and spoken too little. But tonight, Dustwater wasn't laughing at Caleb for the usual reasons. No, tonight the whole town whispered because they had seen where he was headed. Lonely Rock. It was a jagged spire of stone that jutted from the earth like some ancient spear thrown down by angry gods. For generations, stories clung to it like burrs to a saddle blanket. Outlaws used it for hideouts. Native tribes called it cursed. Ranchers swore strange lights moved across it by night, and travelers disappeared along the trails that curved near its shadow. No one went near it. No one but Caleb Hart, the saloon. When Caleb tied Buck outside the Silver Star Saloon, conversation inside dipped, cards stopped shuffling, glasses paused halfway to lips, and a piano note rang a little too long before the player realized he'd frozen. Then came the whispers. "Crazy fool," someone muttered. "Going out to the Rock again," another snorted. By the time Caleb pushed through the swinging doors, every eye was on him. The sheriff Elias Duvall sat at a corner table polishing the star on his vest, as if it mattered more than the men he was supposed to keep in line. Elias was a big man, his belly straining against his shirt, but his gaze was sharp and his hands never far from his Colt. "Well, if it ain't Dustwater's Ghost Rider," Elias called out, his voice loud enough to claim the room. "Tell me, Caleb, how many spirits you reckon you'll scare up out at the Rock this time?" The room chuckled. Men slapped their tables, women behind the bar smirked, and the piano player struck a mocking tune. Caleb didn't rise to it. He ordered whiskey, downed it, and set the glass hard enough to make silence fall again. "What's out there worth finding, Hart?" Elias pressed, rising now. "Treasure? Gold? Or just your pride?" Caleb's eyes locked on the sheriff's, calm but unyielding. "There's something out there," he said low, "and when I find it, maybe this town will quit hiding behind laughter." A stranger appears. That night, while Caleb prepared to ride out toward the Rock, a stranger arrived in Dustwater. He was tall, lean, dressed in black from hat to boots, with a face carved sharp as canyon stone. His name, when asked, was Silas Kane. He didn't drink much, didn't talk much, but when he did, people listened. His voice was cool even, dangerous. And though no one had seen him draw, every man in the saloon felt sure Kane's pistols would clear leather faster than a rattlesnake struck. The stranger asked one question, quiet and direct. "Where's that cowboy headed?" "Lonely Rock," a ranch hand said with a laugh. "Best entertainment we get, watching him chase ghosts." Silas Kane didn't laugh. He just turned his gaze westward, toward the dark silhouette of the Rock against the moonlit plains. On the trail, Caleb rode alone, his only companions the sigh of the prairie wind and Buck's steady hoofbeats. The land out here was merciless, gullies that swallowed men whole, cacti that seemed to thirst for blood, and coyotes that howled like the damned. But Caleb wasn't hunting ghosts, he was hunting truth. Months back he'd found an old map, half-burned, tucked in the saddlebag of a dying outlaw he'd stumbled upon near the Rock. The man had gasped his last words through bloodied lips. "Don't let him find it. The Rock, the gold, buried." Then he'd gone still, leaving Caleb with only riddles and fire in his gut. Every trip to the Rock since had ended in nothing but dust, shadows, and ridicule from Dustwater. But tonight felt different. The moon rode high, casting pale silver across the land, and Caleb's instincts, honed from years tracking Mustangs and outlaws alike, whispered something waited for him. The ambush. Halfway to the Rock, Buck's ears flicked back. Caleb slowed, scanning the trail. Too quiet. The air held its breath. Then came the gunfire. Bullets tore the night. Caleb dove from the saddle, rolled into the dirt, and returned fire. Shadows moved among the rocks. 3, maybe 4 riders. Outlaws. Their laughter echoed between shots, cruel and reckless. "Should have stayed in town, cowboy," one jeered. Caleb's Colt barked. One outlaw dropped. Another cursed as lead tore his arm. The others spurred off, vanishing into the dark, leaving only silence and the smell of gunpowder. Caleb reloaded slow, deliberate. That attack wasn't random. Someone wanted him away from Lonely Rock, or buried beneath it. At the Rock. By dawn, Caleb reached the Rock. The spire rose above him, its surface cracked and scarred by centuries of wind. It loomed like a sentinel, watching. He dismounted, tying Buck to a scrub tree, and studied the stone face. His fingers traced a fissure, deep and narrow, almost like a door cut into the earth itself. Inside was shadow, cool and damp. He lit a lantern and stepped in. The cavern opened into a hollow chamber. Strange markings crawled across the walls, symbols not of outlaws but of something older, carved deep, weathered by time. and in the center, half buried beneath rock and dust, lay a wooden chest bound with iron. Caleb's heart hammered. He knelt, brushing dirt away. The chest bore the same symbols as the walls. With effort, he pried it open. Inside glimmered not gold, but something stranger, bundles of parchment rolled and sealed in wax. A map, a record, a secret older than Dustwater itself. And just as Caleb reached for it, a voice cut through the cavern. "Step away, cowboy." Silas Kane stood in the entrance, pistols drawn, eyes hard as steel. The cavern was silent, save for the hiss of Caleb's lantern, and the low groan of the wind funneled through the fissures of lonely rock. Caleb stood frozen, one hand hovering over the chest, the other clenched around the handle of his Colt. At the mouth of the cavern stood Silas Kane, his silhouette carved against the dawnlight like a figure out of a nightmare. Twin revolvers gleamed at his sides. His voice was steady, cold, and without a trace of doubt. "Step away, cowboy," Kane repeated, boots crunching against the stone floor. "That chest don't belong to you either." Kane's lips twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I'm not here for ownership. I'm here for delivery, and I don't mind collecting what's mine over your corpse." A duel in the dark. The standoff stretched like taut wire. Lantern light danced across Kane's face, catching the scars carved along his jaw. Caleb's pulse thundered in his ears, but his gun hand was steady. "Who sent you?" Caleb asked. "Men with more money than you'll ever count," Kane replied coolly. "Men who know the stories of the rock ain't just ghost tales. They know what's buried here is worth more than gold mines. And you aim to kill me to get it? I aim to do what I was hired for. Dead men don't ask questions." Kane's hand twitched, but Caleb was already moving. His Colt roared. Sparks leapt off stone. Kane rolled into the shadows, returning fire, each shot thunderous in the cavern. Shards of rock splintered off the walls. Caleb ducked behind the chest, bullets tearing into the dirt inches from his face. He fired blind toward the flashes of Kane's pistols. Silence. Then the sound of boots scuffing against stone, moving fast. Kane wasn't retreating. He was circling, hunting. The collapse. Caleb shoved the chest over with a grunt, sending dust billowing. He fired again, the shot ricocheting off stone, and in that instant Kane's gun barked. The lantern shattered. Darkness swallowed the chamber. The gunfire lit it in violent flashes. Caleb crouched low, Kane stalking like a wolf. Then came the rumble. Cracks snaked through the cavern roof. Dust rained down. Both men froze as the rock itself seemed to groan. Then, with a sound like thunder, part of the ceiling collapsed. Caleb was thrown hard into the dirt. Rocks crashed down, sealing the chamber's entrance. When the dust settled, Kane was gone, but the chest remained. The discovery. Coughing through the dust, Caleb dragged the chest back upright. With shaking hands, he tore open the wax seals on the parchments. Maps, journals, sketches of symbols carved into the rock itself, and one phrase, scrawled across multiple pages. The Brotherhood of the Rock. It wasn't just gold. It was something larger, deeper, a secret society, hidden in plain sight, using lonely rock as their altar. Caleb's eyes narrowed. Whatever this was, Kane hadn't been working alone, and if Kane was heading back to Dustwater, or worse to whoever hired him, then Caleb was racing the clock. He packed the papers into his saddlebag, shouldered his way through a crack in the collapsed wall, and emerged back into the blinding sunlight of the desert. Dustwater in flames. When Caleb rode into Dustwater that evening, smoke was already rising. The town was chaos. Gunfire echoed down the crooked main street. Men in black dusters. Kane's men no doubt had descended on the town. The Silver Star Saloon's windows were blown out, whiskey kegs leaking into the dirt. The sheriff's office door hung on broken hinges, and Sheriff Elias Duval lay sprawled on the porch, clutching a bloody shoulder. "Caleb," Elias rasped, eyes wide with pain and fear. "They came asking for the rock. Kane said you found something." Caleb dismounted, kneeling beside him. "Stay still. Where'd they go?" Elias grimaced, pointing weakly toward the church at the end of town. "They're waiting for you." Caleb stood, jaw set. Buck snorted behind him, restless from the smoke and blood in the air. The cowboy reloaded his Colt, checked the spare cartridges at his belt, and began walking down Dustwater's main street. The high noon showdown. The bell of the crooked church tolled once, slow and ominous. Then Silas Kane stepped out into the street, flanked by half a dozen gunmen in dusters. He looked untouched, calm, like the earlier fight in the cavern hadn't even scratched him. "Well, well," Kane called, his voice carrying over the wind. "The Ghost Rider returns, saddlebag full of secrets." Behind him, townsfolk cowered in doorways. Dustwater had seen its share of gunfights, but this felt different, bigger, bloodier. Caleb squared his shoulders. "This ends here, Kane." Kane smirked. "No, cowboy, this is only the beginning." The two men stared across the dusty street, the air thick with heat and fear. Kane's hand hovered near his revolver. Caleb's thumb brushed the hammer of his Colt. The world narrowed to a single breath. Then the street exploded with gunfire, blood and betrayal. Caleb's Colt thundered. One outlaw dropped. Another stumbled. clutching his gut. Kane fired, his bullet grazing Caleb's arm, but Caleb didn't falter. He moved like a man possessed, each shot deliberate, precise. The townsfolk screamed, scattering. Horses reared, windows shattered, dust rose thick, choking the air. When the smoke cleared, only Kane still stood, revolver smoking, eyes blazing. "You can't stop it, Hart," Kane spat, blood dripping from a wound in his side. "The Brotherhood runs deeper than you know. The rock ain't just stone, it's a vault, and you've opened the door." Caleb's grip tightened on his Colt. "Then I'll make damn sure it closes again." He fired. Kane staggered back, eyes wide, then crumpled into the dust. The Brotherhood revealed. As silence fell over Dustwater, Caleb knelt over Kane's body. Clutched in the dying man's hand was a medallion, iron, etched with the same symbols Caleb had seen in the cavern. The Brotherhood was real, and if Kane had carried their mark, then Dustwater was just the beginning. Caleb stood, the medallion heavy in his palm. Around him, the townsfolk crept from their hiding places. Sheriff Elias, pale but alive, leaned against the saloon porch. "You've stirred something, Caleb," he said hoarsely, "and I don't reckon the Brotherhood's gonna let you be." Caleb looked west, toward the jagged silhouette of lonely rock against the crimson sunset. He slipped the medallion into his coat pocket. "Then let him come," he muttered. "I'll be waiting." Epilogue: The Whispering Wind. That night, as Dustwater buried its dead and patched its wounds, Caleb sat alone on the edge of town. The wind whispered across the plains, carrying the sound of distant coyotes. In his lap lay the parchments from the chest, spread wide beneath the starlight. Maps of hidden trails, records of secret meetings, names of men Caleb recognized. Ranchers, bankers, politicians, names tied to the Brotherhood. The laughter of Dustwater's people seemed far away now, almost a memory. They'd laughed at him for chasing shadows at Lonely Rock, but no one was laughing anymore. And Caleb Hart knew the real war was only just beginning.